Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Rashmita, and I'm the event planner for Microsoft Reactor. This session will run over the next 60 minutes, including Q&A. But before we begin today's session, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat section will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. So please feel free to drop all your questions in the chat section. Let me bring in Frank and Yuan, our speakers for today's session.
Hello.
There you go.
Hello.
Perfect. Awesome. Then I think we can start, right?
I think we can start, yes.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Frank Geisler. I'm a long-term Microsoft Data Platform MVP. And if you would like to get in contact with me, just ping me on LinkedIn.
And it's also important to know that Frank has his birthday today. So he's spending a time with you here online.
Okay.
Happy birthday, Frank. Well, I promise not to sing, so I
thank
won't.
You.
But...
Yeah, thank you, Johan. And I think this was the present you promised me, right? Not to sing. But
yes, you paid me quite extensively for this. So.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much.
So, my name is Johan. I'm a Norwegian Data Platform MVP. And you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn or on Blue Sky if you want. Just reach out. And with that, remember, we are live and interactive. So pop into the YouTube chat and say hi and ask questions during the show. There are 3 moderators. You won't see them online, but they will be in the chat talking to you and answering your questions. So that's Will, Lee, and Doher. We are now in the 5th part of the series. So tomorrow there is a Fabric Administration and Governance module, and then next week you get to prepare for your exam day.
Let's talk a little bit about the exam or about the discount, because
because you can get
exactly. So as you might know, Microsoft is turning 50 this year, and for this occasion they will give away 50,000 free certification exam vouchers, right? You can get them here by May 28th.
Yeah, they will draw winners weekly, so there's still chances left to get any. So join this sweepstakes. Then tomorrow at 4 p.m. UTC, there will be an Ask Me Anything on Reddit.
Yeah,
you will have certified trainers, data platform MVPs who will be able to answer all the questions that you have, and more. So join that. Alexi Partnen, Shabnam Watson, and Matthias Halkjær, and several more are joining you. So pop in there if you have any questions.
So let's see what the content is for today, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the managed Fabric environment. And so with CI/CD, monitoring, and security. And we will guide you to the step-by-step mastering of this part.
Exactly.
So what we'll cover today, we will do the overview. I mean, that's just the intro here. We have CI/CD in Fabric. We have some monitoring for analytic solutions. You will see optimization techniques, some security and compliance, and some practical tips for how to master your DP-700.
Exactly. So let's have a look at the certification, right? Okay.
Yep.
So, well, there is this DP-700 certification, which is quite new. It was released last, I think, September on FabCon Europe. And it is about fabric data engineering, right? In distinction to the DP-600, which is about fabric data analytics or fabric data analyst. And so if you want to take this exam, you should have some expertise with things like data loading, right? Data architectures for sure, because essentially as a data engineer, this is what you're building, right? And also with the orchestration process. So if you have different kinds of data loading patterns or data loading things, maybe you have to orchestrate them to have something load after the other, something like this. And so the most important parts in Microsoft Fabric are ingesting and transforming data. Transformation of data is important as well, because usually, and Johan, I think you can just support this as well, is the data coming from some source systems is not like the data you need for analytics, right? So you have to transform something, right? And for sure, another interesting thing we will hear about a little bit more in our talk is securing and managing the solution, because if you put in all this confidential data and everything, then you have to ensure that only people who should see this data are also able to see this data. And for sure, what you have to do as well is afterwards, and after you build the solution, you have to monitor and to optimize it, right? So first of all, monitoring is all about that you know how your solution works, how your solution runs, and probably if something fails, you should know about this as well. And optimizing is a very interesting topic in Fabric and in Azure, because if you optimize stuff, you can really save money. Because in this case, if you optimize it, for example, queries run faster, stuff like this, then you don't spend so much CUs, and maybe you could either think about the CUs in your capacity to use for something else, or what you could do as well is you can maybe scale down to a smaller capacity. And this is all where we will talk a little bit about, right?
Yep.
Okay. Maybe one last remark on this. So what you should know, because it could be a little bit demanding, and you should know a little bit of different languages we are using for data engineering. You should know about SQL. You should know about PySpark, and you should know about Custo or KQL, right? These are the main languages you will need if you do data engineering within Microsoft Fabric.
Yeah, and this is a hands-on exam, so be prepared for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's dive in, Frank. Let's talk about continuous integration and continuous deployment or delivery, if you want.
Yes.
Because so as Fabric data engineers, you are responsible for building and designing and maintaining the items that store, process, and analyze data in your data platform. So you collaborate with your teams to release changes from deployment through production in the different various workspaces that we have. So with multiple engineers working on projects, there's a need to incrementally release and integrate Fabric items and the changes to them, and move those changes through a deployment process so they can be tested and quickly released. I mean, data warehousing has always, or for a long time, had a bad reputation of delivering what the client or the user asked for after they've forgotten what they really asked for. So the CI/CD part here allows us to speed up the development lifecycle, as well as being able to work in parallel on things.
And this is also some kind of an enterprise feature, right? Because if you work in enterprises and if you build data environments in enterprises, there is always a demand that you should place everything you do into a repository, right? And not that you just click your way through the portal and then it's done. No, you have to put everything into a repository, because as Johan already said as well, is you should be able to deploy to different environments, for example.
Yeah, I have to say, if you are a data engineer in today, 2025, and you haven't used source control yet, you should start very, very quickly. Yesterday.
Exactly.
10 years ago, really. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, we're old enough that we when we started out, we didn't use them, but we're old grumpy guys, so that's something else. But now, I mean, even Git itself was back in the days, back when I was young.
True.
So
true.
don't start reminiscing now, even though you have a birthday today and everything. Let's go on. So CI/CD is critical, and it will be on your exam, so pay attention. Remembering that all of your assets in Fabric are housed in a workspace, because we start on the workspace level, and then you have all the items underneath. CI/CD happens within that context, within that workspace. So this is just to get you into the concept of this. So continuous integration, or CI, it means that, or it is concerning the part where all the developers are working on separate code branches. But if you're working on your local machine for a long time and then merging after you've done, say, for a 2-week or 3-week sprint, you're merging whatever you've done into the main repo, suddenly you will see that Frank has done something strange to the data model that you've been working on for ages, and you've got a merge conflict. And merge conflicts are pains. So you want to make sure that you reduce the number of merge conflicts. You want to speed up the check-in and check-out of the repo. So the continuous integration here allows you to avoid bugs and code failures, and that you continuously develop and release functionality. So in a CI fashion, you frequently commit that code to a shared code branch, or you can trunk in a version control system. And then once it's merged, changes are validated by a build process and with automated testing. And automated testing is also something that data developers haven't started using until the last few years. Before that, that was something that only real developers did. Yep.
Yeah, so that's true.
Yeah. So conflicts between you and existing code are identified earlier in the development process and are easier and faster to fix.
Yes, and the good thing here is that if something like I like merge conflicts, Johan, because the good thing is if a merge conflict happens, then this pinpoints that there is something to pay very close attention to. And then the other thing, if you don't use like a Git repository or something like this, or a CI/CD process, the thing would be that someone will just override your changes. Then probably the very important field of your table or something is not there any longer because I overruled it.
This is why I always develop in production.
Yes.
Don't have to care about that. Anyways, continuous delivery. That's the second part of the CI/CD. And continuous delivery happens after continuous integration. So once you've done your commits and we've done the build process and automated testing, code is deployed to a staging environment where more automated testing happens, and then code is released into production after that. So it is a process that automatically releases updates into a production environment through structured deployment stages once they pass the automated tests. So managing the lifecycle of Fabric items using CI/CD has two parts. So integration and deployment, naturally. Integration is implemented using Git, and that can be Git as in Azure DevOps Git, or it can be GitHub. Then the deployment is implemented using Fabric deployment pipelines, and automation of deployment or integration is implemented using the Fabric REST APIs. And the REST APIs are a core part of everything that we do in managing and automating things within Fabric.
Exactly.
So
the whole process is using the REST API. The whole process is using the REST APIs in the background as well. But if you don't want to do it like this, you can use them from whatever environment you would like to.
Yep. So to support continuous integration, you frequently merge your code changes into a shared repo. That shared repo or repository is part of a version control system like GitHub or Azure DevOps. Both of them are based on Git. There are others as well, but they are the main ones. Git is the main codes repository. Version control is a way of managing changes to code over time. So it lets you track code revisions, contribute collaboratively to code development, and revert to prior versions of code if needed. So rolling back is quite easy. GitHub and Azure DevOps are the version control systems that are supported in Fabric. These version control systems allow you to create a copy of the code repo, and that's called a branch. You can use that branch to work on your own code independently from the main version of your team code. And when you have changes to submit, you can commit them to the repo and merge your changes with the main code branch.
Exactly.
And
And what's interesting on here is that this will just automate the process you would do when you don't have like a GitHub repo or something. You would just copy a folder with everything in it and say, well, this is the new version, or this is the backup version or something like this. And the good thing about these code repositories with Git is it just automates all of this process by branches.
Yeah. So again, back to the fact that we're doing workspace containment. So a Fabric workspace is that Git repo that we're working in. And that's that shared environment that accesses live items. So any changes made directly in the workspace overrides and affects all other workspace users. So it's the best practice for you is to develop in an isolated workspace outside of that shared live workspace. So having development workspaces that are not directly connected to a shared development workspace or a test or a production workspace is best practice. Because in that protected workspace, you can connect to your own branch and sync content from the live workspace into your protected workspace, and then commit your changes back to your branch or to the main branch. So you can, first of all, you set up that Git repo, and the first step in doing that is to, in your workspace, connect either DevOps or GitHub to the workspace and integrate it.
Yeah.
First, you do you create that repo in DevOps or GitHub, and then you do the connection in Fabric afterwards. Exactly. That's the correct version.
Exactly. And the good thing about your own workspace is if you have your own isolated workspace, you can just break stuff and no one and you don't affect anyone by this.
Yeah, that is true, and vice versa. The others won't affect you either.
Exactly.
So when you have committed your code, you've passed through the automated testing, and the merge has been improved, you will create the deployment pipelines. And these deployment pipelines enable that CI/CD approach that ensures that content is updated, tested, and then regularly refreshed. So they are an efficient way to automate the movement of content through development, test, and production stages of your development lifecycle.
Yes.
Fabric deployment pipelines help you deploy your Fabric items across different environments like, dev, test, prod, and they let you test everything before it reaches the end users, which is quite nice.
Yes.
Again, APIs, the REST APIs in Fabric are the core that you're interacting with. Normally, when we are working in Fabric, we're either using Visual Studio Code or we're using the web UI, but both of those connect via the REST APIs to the backend and to the metadata layer and so on. So the REST APIs allow you to automate procedures and processes, which means that you can improve efficiency and productivity. REST is a protocol for APIs. It's a representational state transfer, and API is an application programming interface. So that's the REST API, and they're used to manage and interact with various Azure services. So some of the advantages of using these REST APIs are you can automate your repeat processes with consistency, making it easier to perform data processing on an ongoing basis. Seamless integrates with other systems and applications. It provides a streamlined and efficient data pipeline. So the Fabric CI/CD REST APIs are available for deployment pipelines and for Git integrations. And there are some good documentation on that on Microsoft Learn, both for the deployment pipelines and for Git REST APIs. So you can use the REST APIs to commit changes made in the workspace to the connected remote branch. You can update the workspace with commits, push to the connected branch. You can see which items have incoming changes and which items have changed that weren't committed. You can list deployment pipeline stage items, so that returns the supported items from the workspace assigned to that specified stage of the specified deployment pipeline. And you can do deploy stage content, which means that you can deploy items from a specified stage of the specified deployment pipeline. So there are lots of things that you can do here, and it's really easy to get it up and running. So to support continuous integration, you frequently merge your code changes into a shared repo. Sorry, that's what we are doing. Let's connect this. We are using repo. We have set it up. Let's go to the next one, I think. Monitoring.
Yes, monitoring and optimization. Why does this matter? Yeah, well, as already said, it is very important. If you have stuff out there in Fabric, then for sure Microsoft is responsible that stuff will run and that the environment is running and everything like this. But things can go bad. Like, for example, say you have a database somewhere outside of Fabric and you would like to import data from this database through some ingestion pipelines or whatever. And for some reason, the database, which is outside of Fabric, is not available. Then you want to know about this, because in this case, your data that is imported into your database is not current anymore, right? And you want to know about if things break and if things fail, because in this case, if you know about breaking things, then you are also able to repair them. You're not able to repair anything if something is just not happening, but you don't know about this, right? So monitoring is a very important thing. And the other thing, which is also very important, is to have optimize things, right? Because when you optimize things, then it's much easier to see, okay, how do I spend my money? For what do I spend my money in Microsoft Fabric? And maybe how can we optimize this to not spend so much money on different things? Because, as said, if you have something on prem, it doesn't matter if your query runs an hour or runs 10 seconds or stuff like this. But you have something in Azure, this does matter, because if you manage to get your query running within 10 seconds and not within 1 hour, then you don't use so many CUs in here, and then the CUs that are freed by this can be used for something else, and you can make more efficient use of your platform. Maybe some suggestion, or maybe something for the exam. There are, depending on which thing we're looking at, if it is a lakehouse, if it's a warehouse or something like this, there are certain views you can use, for example, to find out which are slow queries. And important for the certification is that you know the names of these views and that you know what you will get from these views. This is very important to know this. And if you know this, right, then you can work on it, and then you can have better resource allocation. You can also enhance the data throughput and the timeliness, right? Because if your ingestion only runs 10 seconds, then your data is much more timely than it runs for an hour or something like this. And what you could do as well, if you know about how the platform works and what's going on, then you can also go for proactive issue detection to see, okay, these are the things at the moment who do not work, and you can think about the resolution. And it's easier to do a proactive issue detection, right, than to not do this. And then sometimes you will be hit very hard when the issue occurs, and then you have to build, or you have to resolve the issue in a big rush, right? Because people cannot access reports, people cannot see data, stuff like this.
Yeah,
so
this is because they have something called throttling in
yes,
Fabric, which means that if
exactly.
you're spending way too much CUs, way more than
Yeah.
you have in your allocated capacity, you will be
Yeah.
throttled and nothing will work.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
the users will be screaming. So if
Yes.
you solve this without user screaming, you will be probably not a very famous superhero, but you still be a superhero.
Oh,
But you
yeah.
will be very unpopular if
You-
you don't. So
You will be not a famous superhero because nobody will know. if you saw it in the background. Okay, so Johan, let's move on. Let's see what the how to monitor an analytical solution. Yeah, well, let's go to the next slide. So, what can we monitor, or what are the moving parts within our Fabric environment, within our Fabric solutions, in our Fabric data solutions? So, first of all, we have data pipelines, right? Data pipelines are used to orchestrate stuff, and there are already some trainings on data pipelines you can watch. But what you should do is you should monitor the data pipeline if the data pipeline is executed. Same is true for data flows, right? So if data flows where you model how data flows from a source to a destination with all of the transformations and stuff like this, and for sure you want to know if this is working as well, or if there are some errors or something which is not working. And the other thing what you can think about with the data flows as well is you can think about optimization here as well to see, okay, this technology, say for example a data flow Gen 2, or I have a Spark notebook to do the data ingestion, and you can think about, okay, what would be for my data, for my special purpose that I'm doing, what would be the better solution to ingest the data? Would it be the data flows Gen 2, or would it be the notebook, for example? Then another important thing is, so what we want to do with all of this Fabric environment, or at least one of the very important things, is that we want to visualize data within Power BI. And Power BI always sits on top of a semantic model. And if the semantic model is importing data, if it doesn't use something like direct link or direct query, then you want to ensure that the semantic model refreshes occur and that the semantic model refreshes are executed in a good way, so that the data which the users see in the Power BI reports is current, and they know this is the most current version of the data I see. Then what we can do as well is if we can schedule notebooks, but if we don't need this graphical user interface of the notebooks, what we can do as well is we can just schedule Spark jobs. The graphical user interface for Spark jobs is rather limited, right? You can define your script what should be run regularly, but this is rather limited. And the thing is, well, what you want to know as well is if a Spark job just failed or something like this, because then you can also investigate what's going on, and then you can just repair this. As already said, notebooks can be executed as well, and notebooks cannot be only executed interactively. What you could do as well is you can execute notebooks either within a schedule or within a pipeline. And for sure, if this notebook fails, then you want to know this as well, because then you have to take countermeasures that the notebook, through the next execution, notebook will work again. And we have the lakehouses. For lakehouses, we want monitoring as well. So in this case, we want to know, for example, how quick queries are executed, and if we, for example, are able to optimize this query execution. And there are several techniques, much too much to cover in this short presentation here, but at least you should know that there are these views and which information you get from the views. And another thing where Johan and I are very much interested in is our event streams from real-time intelligence. And for sure, what an event stream does is an event stream is about streaming data, it's about processing a stream of data. And if this fails, you want to know as well, right? Because if the event stream fails, then the data no longer data is ingested in your KQL database, stuff like this, and you want to know this as well. Okay, so let's see. Now we know what can be monitored. So Johan, let's see what would be the best practices to do this. So the best practices would be, first of all, what we should do is we should identify what can we actually monitor. And what we should do as well is we should collect and retrieve data and review data. And we should collect this data not only because we want to see some errors and stuff like this. Another thing, why we collect data as well is we want to know about the normal operation state of our environment, right? So that we know, okay, on a normal day, we will spend this and this amount of CUs because of all of the things going on, right? And only if we know this, and if we know this like a baseline, then we can also see if the system is getting away from this baseline because it's processing more or it's processing less or something like this. And this could also be an indicator for something is happening, right? Something maybe weird is going on in the background. For sure, if on basis of the data collection we see some issues, then for sure we should resolve the issues. And overall, what we should do as well is we should optimize the performance of stuff, right? And what we can do throughout good monitoring is we can identify bottlenecks to see, okay, this is a bottleneck and we have to care about this bottleneck to get the overall process running more smoothly and running more quickly, right? So, and the good thing is there is a so-called fabric monitoring. And if we just proceed to the next slide, then we can see what the fabric monitoring hub is all about. So what you can see here is you can see for all these different things, like you see the semantic models in the screenshot, you see the data pipelines, data flows Gen 2, all of this you can see. And what you can see as well is you can see the status, the activity status of this. So status could be like running, status could be like succeeded in this case, or status could be like failed. And if you go into the monitoring hub and if you see stuff which fails, then the next thing you would be interested in, or you should be interested in, is to find out, okay, why is this stuff failing, right? What you see as well is you see the start and the end time. This is also a very important information because on this you can estimate how long a process will work, right? So if we see, for example, here we see a data pipeline, the semantic model refresh data pipeline, and we can exactly see from the start and the end time, we can exactly see how long this is supposed to run, right? The other thing, what we see as well, this can be calculated from start and end time for sure, is the duration, and we see an activity statistics. And this is what all this information you can get from the Fabric Monitoring Hub gives you good information about how your environment is proceeding. And the other thing, it gives you good information on, okay, where are probably things where I have to optimize stuff, right? And this is very interesting as well to know this, right? Then there is one thing, if you want to have like more like an overview or something like this, there is this thing which is which you can use for monitoring the capabilities for admins. Johan, let's go to the next slide, and then we can show. Okay, this is the monitoring app, and what you can see here. Well, first of all, this will be if you want to see this in the Fabric tenant, there is a new admin monitoring workspace, and what you can do here is you can see how the capacities work and how much user spends and stuff like this. And so if we click one further, then you can see an overview, but you can always dig into this, and you can dig into single queries to just find out, okay, what is wrong with this single query? How much resources does it consume? And what is it? And not only how much resources it does consume, but you can also see for what. And then you see, okay, it might consume the resources for the wrong kind of work. So let's have a look at this, and let's have a look how we can optimize this so that we can leverage our Fabric environment as good as we can. And to see this, you have to be capacity admin. So you can see this. It is called the Microsoft Fabric Capacity Matrix app. This is the full name of this. What this will do is it will not only show you. So what you could do if you build a Fabric environment, you don't have to have only one capacity. You can have multiple capacities. And what this monitoring app will do as well is it will show you all of your capacities, or at least all of the capacities you have access to. And you can not only analyze one capacity, but what you could do is you can analyze all your capacities which are in your environment. Okay.
Just to add to that,
Yeah,
the capacity app is also a very good way for you to understand your usage over time.
exactly.
It is in itself, it is not a monitoring tool for real-time monitoring. It is a Power BI app. So it is refreshed 4 times a day regularly, but you can manually refresh it.
Yeah.
But it's still a Power BI app that pulls data out. So, but it is very good at showing you over time where you have your bursts, so where you go over capacity. And then you have that burst smoothing part where you can smooth a burst or overconsumption over 24 hours. So it is a very good way of showing you how your capacity is doing over a period of time. And in many cases, being able to go into starting off a trial capacity and monitoring that using the capacity metrics app will allow you to estimate roughly how much capacity you will need when you go live.
Exactly. Because it is rather hard to say how much capacity you will need if you go live, because there are so many different moving parts, the amount of data, the frequency of how your data is loaded, all of this. And as Johan already said, what you could do here is you can just build a proof of concept, for example, and then you can run this metrics app, and the proof of concept could be on a Fabric trial capacity, right? Then you run this metrics app, and you exactly see all of what is happening, and then you can have a very good estimation on how much this will cost.
And don't worry, because everything is connected to the workspace, as we mentioned in CI/CD. That means that all the items that you're building, even though it's on a trial capacity, you can change from a trial to a paid capacity, and all your items will still be there.
Exactly. Okay, speaking about optimized analytical solutions.
Yeah. So let's talk more about performance optimization. From the study guide, there are some key focus areas. So we have the storage part, so lakehouses, data warehouses, databases. Then you have your compute part, such as Spark, but also the SQL endpoints and KQL. And then you have processing. So again, 3 main areas that you need to focus on when you're talking about or answering questions in the exam about optimization: storage, compute, and processing.
Yes.
So if you worked with tools like Databricks or Snowflake or even traditional SQL Server, optimization principles can feel quite familiar, because you will think about things like partitioning a table in the lakehouse. Because even though you're partitioning a table in, Fabric is using Delta Lake. So a Delta Lake in a lakehouse is exactly the same as a Delta table in Data Lake table in Databricks. Many of the same principles are also used when partitioning a table in a large SQL server, if you want to do that. Query tuning in a data warehouse is very much like optimizing SQL Server queries. You will also need to think about query tuning for the analytical endpoints on your lakehouse. But query tuning also in a Spark environment is something that you need to think about.
And what's rather cool of this is that even the technologies like the lakehouse or the warehouse are different technologies from a SQL server. The views where you can get the data from for all of this optimization are even named the same. So you can just query them, and you see, for example, the view where you see the queries, how long queries run and stuff like this. It's really cool.
Yeah, so it's important to remember that everything in Fabric is unified.
Yeah.
So there's no need to think about complex integrations or custom pipelines to make it work.
Yes.
Everything is connected through the one lake and a unified compute engine, even though there are still like 5 compute engines here. We have Vertipack for Power BI, we have Spark, we have Custo, we have SQL DB, we have the SQL analytic endpoints and data warehousing. So there are several different compute engines, but everything is actually can be seen as a unified compute engine in this case for optimizing and for storage.
Exactly.
So it's important to note that you think about things for when your optimization strategies for your lakehouse tables. So partitioning, that helps you reduce the amount of data that needs to be scanned for a query. Remember that the Delta Lake table is basically a wrapper in a folder where you have the transaction data in a subfolder, and then the rest of the data is stored in Parquet files.
Yeah.
So partitioning the table so that you have the data that you're frequently using in one Parquet file and so on, so it's easier to find the right data instead of scanning lots of Parquet files, is important.
Exactly.
You can partition in Fabric by column that is frequently queried, like date or region, and that also then helps that query performance.
Yeah.
Partitioning also helps manage large data sets more efficiently by reducing the amount of data that is being processed for each query. So, but don't over-partition.
No.
Choose a partitioning strategy that is based on your query patterns. So again, it's not something that you might do just out of the box because you need to understand your patterns. But that might be a time-based or category-based solution. So if you take too much partitioning, that will slow down again because then suddenly you have too small partitions and so on. It might,
that's true.
And it might also not just slow down your reads, but also your writes. Yeah. Then you need to think about compaction. Delta Lake tables support small file optimization, which is a very main key in preventing read performance degradation, because Parquet files have an optimal size in terms of row groups and number of rows. And if you have too many small files, again, this is much like if you're familiar with the column store, it's the same kind of approach. If you get too many small row files, too many small files, your read process or speed will degrade. So you need to think about compacting the files. Optimizing is the command that you're using to combine all the smaller files into larger ones to create faster read performance, so that you get the optimal. So optimize makes, of course, optimal Parquet file sizes. The last part that you need to think about is Z ordering or Z ordering, because that's an optimization technique that sorts the data based on frequently queried columns. And that helps avoid scanning unnecessary data. And in Fabric, Z ordering is particularly useful when you have a column with high cardinality, such as customer ID or product ID, because it enables more efficient predicate pushdowns where queries are only reading relevant data. So the best practice here is to implement Z ordering on columns that are often used in where clauses or in filters to reduce the data scanned. And you can apply this to your existing tables as well to improve performance incrementally. Fabric offers automatic optimization like data compaction during writes and some level of partitioning optimizations based on your workloads. However, manual optimization can be performed when you need more fine-grained control. And in many cases, I mean, Fabric will learn your patterns, but until it does, and even after it does, I will, at least personally, I'm all done grumpy enough that I want to have control and want to monitor things. Because it's, the automatic query and indexing in Azure SQL is not something I trust. Again, call me all
No, but on the other hand, even if all of this automatic stuff is working and so on, this might work for 80 or 90% of all of the cases, but there are these other cases which are special cases for whatever reason it doesn't work at this moment as intended. And so as we are already talking about in the monitoring part, if this happens, you would like to know, and you would like also to know that this happens and what you can do against this, and then you will be there with your manual optimization, right? Because an automatic system cannot cope every of special cases that are thinkable.
Yep, but let's move on. So, compute and processing optimization is another important part. So when working with pipelines, it's crucial to minimize unnecessary transformations because that reduces the overhead and it utilizes parallelism for faster data processing. So think of it as streamlining a production line in factory. Less unnecessary handling means more efficiency. Also think about doing incremental loads or even CDC where you can. So only updating that change data that you have because it is more efficient. And think about using event-based triggers for real-time scenarios, or if you have data coming in from a customer or a supplier, but you're not exactly sure when it happens, but roughly once a month, doing event-based triggers instead of going and programming a schedule that checks every month or every 3 weeks or something is a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
For event streams and event houses, real-time filtering and transformation during data ingestion can significantly reduce the data volume that you're handling, and that improves efficiency. And it's similar to sorting and processing mail as it arrives instead of dealing with a huge backload. Utilizing time windows in event streams to group streaming data also helps manage and analyze incoming information effectively. Using the and Frank, you need to help me. My brain froze. The ingestion mechanisms in KQL instead of using event streams might also be the ingestion policy. That's the name.
Update policies.
Update policies. Thank you. See, you helped me.
Yeah, very welcome.
Yes, you were helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yes. And when it comes to Spark workloads, think about optimizing your cluster size based on the workloads. That helps balance performance and costs. And auto-scaling is like adjusting the number of workers on a busy day to meet demands without overspending. So query optimization techniques, tuning partitioning sizes, caching strategies, broadcasting joins are things that you need to think about in this case. Yep.
Yes, that's true.
Query optimization can apply to various components. In the data warehouse, you will think about optimizing these queries with using materialized views or using the proper indexes to improve performance. Databases, SQLDB as well. Also important to think about optimization processes here, like, again, views, proper indexing, and so on. And for analytic engines such as Spark, you need to think about other kinds of query optimization. I mean, you can still write crappy code in Python or in KQL, so making sure that you help your users or you do it on your own, optimize the queries to only select the right things to enhance performance.
Yeah, very important. Yeah. So security. Now let's talk about security, because security is very important, because you don't want that everyone will just be able to access your data, right? Because usually if you are processing data, then this data is also maybe some confidential data, stuff like this, right? And so we have to think about security.
Yeah, and not leaking Frank's birthday up on YouTube, for instance, like we did.
Oh yes, that would be horrible. I'm really scared about this situation. Oh yeah. So
this architecture here is important, and it's not. I find it very useful when we're also discussing and understanding how you interact with Fabric, because we are always hitting the web browser first. That's or VS Code when you've started being more full code, and that browser first authenticates you via Entra, and then it passes back your token, allows you to access the web front end. And when you're working with, say, an event stream or a pipeline, you're dragging and dropping things onto the canvas. Everything that happens there happens only in the web front end. So it's only when you do publish that things are being saved and pushed to the backend platform. So this is important. So publish often, but it also means that you have your REST APIs that are separating your backend and securing your backend from the front end and from web interactions.
Exactly. And what's good on this whole approach of Fabric is that it relies on Microsoft Entra ID, and this is good for two reasons. One reason is that you can leverage all the functionality which is in Entra ID, like, for example, multi-factor authentication, stuff like this. And the other thing is maybe you already have like a group structure within your Entra ID where there are groups for marketing, for controlling, for whatever. And these groups can also not only be used for, say, SharePoint or Intune deployments or stuff like this. These groups can also be used to give permissions within Microsoft Fabric, which is a cool thing. So you have only to think once about your groups. And if there is a new person coming to marketing or coming to controlling, you only have to put the person into the right group, and she or he has the ability to access all of this data in the in Fabric, which they should access and which they should see.
Yeah, but I want to point out also the metadata platform that you see here, because we are dealing with a unified data platform, unified storage, and separate compute engines. The fact that we have a metadata platform that stores all the metadata separately from the data is very useful. It is dead on important if you want to be able to share this between everyone else. But both the metadata platform and the back-end capacity platforms are operating on separate virtual networks, which is important. It also means that the web front end and the back ends are separated, but talking to each other. This also allows you to secure this if you're using an environment with lots of private networks and so on. Everything here is tied together and meant to work in an environment like that.
Yeah, that's true.
So data security, because we're integrating with Microsoft Entra Tenant, like Frank said, you do have all your identity access management there. You have your groups that you can base the role-based accesses on. All data stored in OneLake is encrypted automatically at rest. So that means that it's being encrypted properly. Of course, data in transit is also then using TLS security. So there's no problem there. Lots of data can be, or all the data can also be then locked down using role-based access controls. So you have granular permission on for users and groups. Do pay attention to the fact that all the different compute engines have their own security mechanisms. So some have something called so the KQL has something called restricted view, and the others don't. Some have column-based security, so which means that you can have both row and column, and which means cell level security, whereas others only have row level security. Some based column obfuscation, some have column-based encryption, but yet all of them have to be tuned slightly differently. But all of them make sure that you have a secure environment to work in.
Yeah.
So designing and planning your security groups, assigning the roles to those, and getting them in. It's quite easy, but it's still, you need to think about which of the compute engines that you're working with, as well as the rest here.
Yeah, and this is one of the most important parts to do, right?
Yeah. We can talk longer about this, but we don't have time. So.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Data compliance, we are on only 7 minutes left, so that's important. Key compliance features here on this slide support your organization's need for securely managing data across regions. You have global compliance for global businesses. You have multi-geo and data sovereignty, so data can be stored in the European teams' data boundaries, whereas the US teams or the Asian teams access their data but are not able to access Europe, for instance. And then again, metadata being handled separately means that it is efficient and secure. And of course, this Fabric ties so tightly and well into the rest of the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's following the same tenants, the same compliance rules. You can put Purview on top of everything with the information protection. Yeah, it's scalable, secure, and easy to use.
Yeah, that's true.
So monitoring ensures your data and processes remain secure. and compliant by giving you the visibility and tools you need to manage risks proactively. And then again, maintaining trust in your data platform. You have Microsoft Purview, Azure Monitor, Log Analytics, and Microsoft Sentinel to play crucial roles in, again, tying everything tightly together, both in activity logs, audit logs, data access monitoring, alert notification, integration with monitoring tools, again, Log Analytics and Azure Monitor, as well as Sentinel on top of that. And of course, you can get compliance reports to demonstrate compliance with GDPR or HIPAA, or using the built-in tools to check adherence with corporate policies.
So let's talk a little bit about the tips for the DP-700 exam. So what you should do, or how you could prepare. So first of all, what's I think very important is to have hands-on practice, because if you do hands-on practice, you just train your muscle memory a little bit, and you know, okay, if I want to do this and if I want to achieve that, then I have to click here, then I have to click here, and this also makes it more easy to recognize certain functionalities, right? And you could have hands-on practice either by, for example, doing things like the applied skills within Microsoft Learn. There are several applied skills on Microsoft Learn where you are solving some tasks in a real virtual environment, right? Another thing is that if you go on the pages for DP-700 from Microsoft, you will see there is a big list of study guides and resources you could use to gain all this knowledge that you will be tested on in the exam. And there is also a practice test where you can just learn, and the practice test will show you a little bit how, for sure, these are not the questions which are in the exam, right? But on the other hand, it gives you a little bit more insight to this, and and what you could do there is you can try to understand which kind of questions will come your way, and how the difficulty level of these questions would be. And for sure, the Microsoft Lab courses are there, and what you could do as well, always to just gain more insights on this, is you could do some sample projects, right? Because if you do sample projects, if you think about stuff, then in this case, it's just all of this will help you to remember things in the exam, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember that if you have familiarity with or have done the DP-203, there are lots of overlap, but you have to think about the fact that Fabric is so tightly integrated. So One Lake and the unified compute. So that's the differences that you need to think about in this case.
Yeah, that's true. And this is it. So let's wrap up. So
so next on tomorrow.
Yeah, next one is tomorrow, and the next one is about Microsoft Fabric administration governance, where you'll learn even more about these very important topics. And also these are topics which are important for our certification. And next slide again.
Remember this. Yep. There is not a slide here about Ask Me Anything on Reddit tomorrow, but again, yes, that is happening tomorrow. If somebody on the moderators can put that link in the chat again. So do go there to get questions answered.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, you can find more resources here as well, and then of course continue the conversation going forward.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, by this, thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you very much for listening to us. And both of us are crossing fingers for your exam, right? That everything went well. And but I think if you are prepared in a good way, then this will, then there is a very good chance that you will pass this exam.
Yes. Being hands-on, and train and use all the free trial availabilities to you, even though I know that if you only have access to a Gmail, that's a bit hard, but there are ways around that, because I mean, I think they only check for Hotmail, Outlook.com and Gmail, so if you have any other email providers, they will probably let you pass.
Could be.
But yeah, that's the the big thing here, get into trials, get your hands on learning.
Yeah.
There are lots of sample scenarios inside Fabric as well as on the Learn.
Yes.
And then just get prepping.
Yes.
With that,
Okay.
I think we are done for the day. So thank you for all for attending and good luck.
Yeah, thanks for attending. Bye-bye.